So welcome to the Advisory Board Insights. I have Phil Aris with me today. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Louise. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Phil, thank you for taking the time to share your story as well as your insights and your experience around advisory boards. So let's start off with maybe sharing a bit about your background.
Great. Thanks, Louise. Well, I'll go back a little bit to the early days when I graduated as an economist from the University of Western Australia. I got a job on a graduate scheme with SEQA, which was the State Energy Commission of Western Australia at the time, and got a lot of experience running around the different departments and learning things from Treasury through to distribution, marketing, finance, etc. And that was a great grounding for the first part of my career. I then moved into banking. I got involved with Challenge Bank, the listing of Challenge Bank in WA, which eventually merged with Westpac. I've worked overseas in London and Hong Kong on a number of stints with on corporate advisory roles and for large multinationals, which allowed me to run around in Asia, for example, when I was in Hong Kong, and set up businesses in different countries of Asia, including India, China and Indonesia, which was very exciting, 100 miles an hour, and then spent a stint in London. I came back to Australia, West Australia, then to Sydney in the early part of 1990s, and kicked off once again in the banking world. Ended up running the credit card business at Commonwealth Bank under Gail Kelly at the time. She hired me. Once again, that was a great experience. It brought back a little bit of my banking world, and then moved into a company called Thorn EMI, and once again went overseas for a stint. Thorn EMI was a multinational, 56,000 people around the world. So I've worked for big organisations and smaller organisations. More recently, I ran a professional services company called Count Plus, which was about 120 million turnover, 26 offices around the country, national business, predominantly accounting, financial planning, a bit of property and some fintech investments, which was quite exciting. So a lot of experience in management, business development, directorship roles, managing director and CEO in both, governance boards and also in smaller enterprises and big corporates. So it's quite a broad history of my background. And so for me, I think I can give a lot to younger people, particularly in smaller enterprises, giving them my experience. And helping them initially just facilitate learnings for them, what they can do and can't do, what's worked for me, what hasn't been successful, because every person has failures, and what you learn from those failures, and being quite open and and brave with my discussions with young people. At the moment, I'm sitting on 3 different advisory boards as their chair. The average age is probably about mid-30s to late 30s. One particular one recently is a little bit older, but they're young in spirit, and they're very entrepreneurial. They like to run 100 miles an hour, so you need their checks and balances.
Yeah.
And look, my experience in setting up advisory boards is initially it's really about just forming a relationship with the founder and the managing director. And all my advisory boards are founders and major shareholders of their particular companies. So it's building that rapport with them early is very important, so you can get their trust, understand the key issues around their business, what's worked for them, what hasn't, other things they might want to try, etc. And then establishing from that where the key areas of their business they need more expertise. I mean, I don't call myself an expert in any particular area, more of a generalist, and you can sort of tell that from my background, much more in management roles. But having said that, smaller enterprises where I've rolled my sleeves up. So it's important to get that balance. And look, initially it's a facilitating role. You ask them questions about what problems are they trying to solve? Why does their organisation exist? What's the purpose of their organisation? What's their culture? How do they want to develop it over time? What are the things that keep them awake at night, etc. And from there, build some rapport and trust, and make them a little bit braver in their decisions, and start to think outside the box, and bring on expertise when and where they need it. So that's very important, and finding that balance. It's not an exact science. It is a bit of suck and see it, and it's different for different folks. But there's a general story, which is they're very open. They're looking for somebody that has been there, done it before, not all, and also telling some of the stories that didn't work and the things that they need to be aware of and to tread carefully.
And Phil, what do you see has been the impact of the advisory board have on the business and the owners?
Yeah, look, at first they're a little bit in sort of denial about, do they need an advisory board? What's this all about? I have a governance board. I have people that have mentored me in the past, etc., on and off type of thing. So initially there's a little bit of pushback. They're not sure how the process works. So it's not to push them too hard to start with. It's initially to get them to start talking about their business and start talking about the things that are important to them. As I mentioned before, what keeps them up at night, what really concerns them. And typically it's about things like, you know, I don't know if I have the resources. I don't know if I have the skill set. I'm not sure if I'm making the right decisions. I feel a little bit on my own and haven't got the opportunity to talk to other people. And that might be a consequence of they are the boss. They're the person, and therefore it's difficult for them to get close to other people. So once you sort of bring down those barriers, it's much easier for them to then start to open up and talk to them about advisory boards are more entrepreneurial. They're talking about how do you become more innovative? How do you become more creative in your business? How do you cut through? And you don't have to take all the advice, but it's certainly opening up the ability for you to think and get the right people with you along that journey that can help you. So it really is a holding your hand, giving them direction, making them feel a little bit braver about what they can and can't do, and saying to them, you know, yes, you can make these decisions, and yes, it's okay to be decisive and not sit on the fence. And it's okay to bring people in around you and trust them and build a business and a culture that is what you want to do and you're struggling to do, but there's people out there that can help you. A lot of them didn't know about the Advisory Board Centre, didn't know it existed. They thought it was a sensational idea, long overdue, and saw the benefits of it down the track. And I think for us as a group, it builds networks. It also introduces them to other people that they would never have an opportunity to talk to or hear from. So all those things are very positive. So they're very open. It's initially a little bit of a sales story, as anything is. Make them feel comfortable, get them to understand why it's going to add value for them. It's not threatening. And it's quite easy to do. And I always start with, don't go too big to start with. Just take it small, little steps. As you know, a win gets a win, and as that confidence builds, then you might have more confidence to go for a fully fledged advisory board, which takes some time to do.
It takes time. And Phil, you know, you're right. With the advisor concierge that we've been doing for the last 18 months, majority of business, 92% of them have never had an advisory board before. So they are so brave, aren't they, when they first take do something completely new normally in a phase where they're really going through a growth path as well. Absolutely,
100% agree. And as an advisory chair, I think the important thing is we open the door. We start that facilitation process, get them feeling comfortable about how it works, and say it's not a big jump. You don't have to take a big jump into it. You can test the waters, start off with the chair, get an understanding of what's required, what's involved, get some confidence. And look, initially it might just be you become a little bit of a coach for them, but that's fine. But part of that coaching role is to say, I can't do everything for you. And there's some really skillful people in this network and add a lot of value. First of all, it's worth knowing that they're out there. Who are they? What do they do? And then start from there on how you can pull a board together that can add a huge amount of value to your business.
And that's an important note about that evolution of that relationship and where your value is placed. So Phil, you've been doing this now for a long time. So what are your tips to, first of all, to business owners and also tips for advisors?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the number one tip is don't feel that you just have to be focused on people within your industry. I think it's very important to see that there's a lot of skill sets outside your industry, and we tend to feel, this is just human nature, I'm an expert in a certain area, this is my field, and therefore I don't feel I can get any advice from anybody outside that field. Now, the advisory board is great because, yes, we can bring in people from different industries and different sectors that have got expertise, but we also have a wide variety of skill sets across other industries. And it's really important to know what other industries and other sectors are doing. So there's a broad learning journey that they can go on, which is, I think, very important. It allows them to be more creative and more broader in their thinking process. So I think that's one tip. So be open, be very, very open, be very engaging. Always look for building a culture also within your organisation. The first point I always start with is, what is your reason for existence? So, that's a bit of the passion story. Why are you here in the first place? What are you trying to do? What value are you trying to bring? You've got to get that message right first in your own mind. And then as a leader, you then portray that amongst all your stakeholders, particularly your staff, and then obviously your clients and your suppliers and whoever else forms part of your service offering. So I think that's very important. The openness, the ability to look outside just your own house. There are other areas that you need to look at. I think also to be very cognizant of the world and how quickly it's changing. I believe we're in a technology revolution at the moment. That's going to get exponentially more involved and move quicker and quicker. You need to be at the forefront of that. You need to understand how technology is affecting your industry and your business and your clients, how they think. So you've got to move forward in the curves. That's very important. And while all this is happening, and most of the people I deal with are founders, how do you portray who you are and your values across your whole organisation, and filter that down to suppliers and clients in particular?
That's interesting when you deal with a lot of the founders, which are generally on a scale-up sort of stage. When you're so busy, it's great to take a step back and really consider those.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What advice would you provide advisors?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. I think crucially, advisors need to be relevant for the day. They've got great experience and history is wonderful, but they also need to know how the world's working today and how it needs to move forward, because mostly they're going to be talking to young companies, young people who are going to be very up to date with what's happening. And if you're not, then you'll be left back behind. So have a thirst for knowledge, read a lot, talk to a lot of people, get out and about, build your networks, understand what's happening out there in the market, because it's moving 100 miles an hour. Yeah. I constantly do that. I'm always reading, news journals, articles, understanding what's happening out there in the market, where the trends are, even going to, conferences on a constant basis when you can. I know it's not easy to do, but it's very important, because if you don't come across as being, relevant or understand what's happening in today's market, and you can't give some insight as to what your opinion would be moving forward, then it's going to be very difficult to sell your value to your clients and to your advisory boards in the future. That's very important. And I think, once again, the advisory board centre creates a great network to do that. And when we have our conferences and our get-togethers, people talk about what they're doing, what they've learned. And to get that conversation and communication going is pretty powerful if you do it well. So as a team and as a network, we need to build on that and get better at it, because that's why people then start coming to us rather than us having to push ourselves out there in the market. They'll know that we are relevant and innovative in what we do and how we think, and we've got people that really understand and get insight. Insight's very important.
Yeah, terrific. Phil, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and appreciate it when you've got so much on your plate, being an in-demand chair as you are. But thanks again, and always come back and let us know any more updates. This interview is an open table for you.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Louise. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.